With over 70% of people now working from home at least some of the time, as a business owner, it's time to think about your work from home cybersecurity. Fortunately, I'm going to make this a little bit easier for you because today, in this video, I'm going to give you my 12 essential tips for remote working cybersecurity. If you've not been here before, my name is Jonathan Edwards and I'm a business IT consultant from Yorkshire in the UK. I help businesses with their IT support and their cybersecurity. So why not subscribe to my channel? Working from home is here to stay. I see this topic debated on social media. Lots of people like to work at home all of the time. We've got people who prefer to be in the office, and then we've got people like me who prefer a mix of both. But whatever you prefer doing, working from home certainly has created some technology challenges, particularly with cybersecurity. Back at the start of this pandemic, people just picked up the devices and started working from home. There wasn't much thought to IT policies or cybersecurity. And to be honest with you, I don't think that attitude has changed. Lots of business owners just aren't giving it enough attention. Whether your team are working in the office, whether they're working at home, whether they're working at customer sites, wherever their location, as a business owner or a senior leader, it is your responsibility to make sure that they're working securely. So I've created this video to share my 12 essential tips with you. Now, my most recommended tip for you I've saved to the very end. There's two reasons for this. This means hopefully you'll watch all of the video and you'll learn a lot, and also it'd be great for my YouTube stats. So my first tip is to ensure that you're using a centralized and easy to access storage solution for your data. So that's your files and your folders. It's time to have a close look at how your business is storing files and folders. Is it easy to access, or is it quite slow? Is it clunky? Is it inconvenient? If it is any of those things, then what people will do is store documents on the local devices, and that is a big risk to your business. It means you're not in control of all of your data. Secondly, it's really important that this storage solution is properly backed up. I always recommend businesses should use Microsoft 365 for storing files and folders, but even Microsoft 365 needs a proper third-party backup. So that is my first tip. Make sure that your business files and folders are kept somewhere that is convenient, quick to access and secure. Now my second tip is all about home Wi-Fi security. Now unfortunately, as a business owner, you do have to take an interest into the Wi-Fi security that your staff members have at home. If we think about your office environment, you've probably got a robust firewall, you've probably got secure Wi-Fi which is managed by your IT support company. The same, unfortunately, isn't true when we're talking about people's homes. Now, I'm not suggesting that you provide everyone with a state-of-the-art firewall to be used at home, but what you should be doing is enforcing a policy that if people want to work at home, they should at least adhere to basic Wi-Fi security. Now, when I talk about basic Wi-Fi security, I'm really talking about four things. The first thing is to make sure that there's a strong password to access the Wi-Fi at home. The second thing is to make sure that the SSID, that's the Wi-Fi name when you're searching for networks, doesn't identify the person. So it shouldn't be like the family name or anything like that. Again, it should be something random. Third, encryption should be enabled on the home Wi-Fi routers. This can be done in the settings in network security. And the fourth tip should be that the password to log on to the router admin, that's the back end of the router, should be changed from the default one. It should be a random strong password. Now those four basic Wi-Fi security controls are part of the UK Cyber Essentials framework here in the UK. So it really is basic stuff. Now it's time to be really honest with yourselves. Have you asked these questions about the home Wi-Fi security of your team members? I bet you haven't. My third tip is about device encryption, and don't worry, it's not as technical as it sounds. With more people working from home, it means that more people have laptops, and with people working outside the office, there's a higher chance that these laptops can be lost or stolen. It's more important than ever to make sure that these portable devices are encrypted, so if the laptop is lost or stolen, the data can't be accessed. Now, it's not as technical as it sounds. Windows 10 provides free encryption as part of the operating system. That is called BitLocker. So everyone should have access to device encryption. But you've got to make sure that it's enabled and it's working properly across all the devices in your business. Now for my fourth tip, and it's time once again for me to bang the drum for strong passwords and two-factor authentication. Strong passwords and two-factor authentication is one of my main cybersecurity tips, but unfortunately so few people are doing it. Two-factor authentication is when you need a second level of authentication to access an application, as well as your username and password. So this second level of authentication is usually a 6-digit code on an application or a text message. So the thing you need to do is do an audit of all the applications that your business uses. That's email applications, cloud storage, CRM, accounting software. There are lots of different applications that your business will use. Then you've got to make sure that everybody is using strong passwords to access these applications. And then you've got to check that two-factor authentication is available for the applications, and if it is, enable it. If everybody in your business are using strong passwords for everything and two-factor authentication, it's going to be great for your cybersecurity. As an extra little tip to this one, why don't you also give people access to a cloud-based password manager, something like Keeper Security, so that can handle all the passwords for them. Tip number 5 is to make sure that you use a VPN, especially to access applications. I know lots of businesses who still use applications that are installed on servers in their offices or servers in the data center. My IT company support a lot of law firms and a lot of accountants, and these two different types of businesses still use lots of on-premise applications. Now, if this is the case for your business, then make sure that you have a VPN in place to access these applications. So if the person is working from home on the laptop, they need a VPN to connect to the server which is hosting the application. A VPN will make sure that that connection is secure and encrypted. Again, another great tip for your cybersecurity. Tip number 6 is all about email security. Now, with more of us working from home, it means that we're going to be sending more emails because we're not seeing people face to face as much. So we've got to look at how we use email, and there are definitely some tips we can give to increase the security of your email system. Now, the first thing you can do is have a company policy that states that personal email accounts shouldn't be used at all. Now, this all might sound a little too simple, but we only have to cast our minds back just a few weeks when the then Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, was caught using his personal email address for government matters. So make sure you have a policy, which means that no one is allowed to do it in your business. Now, the second thing to remember about email security is that email actually isn't a secure way of communicating. Email was invented as a simple messaging application, but it's turned into this communication tool today, and people share too much private information via email. If you've got something really private or confidential to share via email, then make sure the email is encrypted, or find another way of sharing that information which doesn't involve email. Now, the third thing to remember about your email security is to make sure that everyone is aware of phishing attacks, especially those related to COVID. A phishing attack is where a cyber criminal might send you an email to try and entice you to click on a link to enter personal information or click on an attachment. This is all with the aim of eventually trying to steal money from your business. It's really important that people are trained properly on how to spot a phishing attack. Now, why don't you get people to watch my video on how to identify a phishing attack using the DAC method. Easy and free training. Tip number 7. Now I want to talk about the home workspace that your team members are sat in. Now obviously you've got a duty of care to make sure that they're not sitting on uncomfortable dining room chairs or craning their necks all day. But there's also an important cybersecurity aspect to people's home working environment. Can other people in the same household hear them on voice calls, video calls? Can they see the computer screens? When it comes to data protection, family members and members of the same households are just classed as third parties, and they shouldn't be able to hear private conversations or see private information on computer screens. So once again, it's your responsibility to make sure that people at home have a private space to work in and that they can't be overheard, and make sure that the computer screens lock after a period of inactivity. All these are simple policies but very effective. Tip number 8 is all about printing documents. Do people still print documents? Of course they do. Again, this is something that a lot of business owners probably haven't even considered. When people print documents in the workplace, you've probably got a means of securely disposing of those documents when people have finished with them. The same can't be said at home. People might print really confidential documents out and leave them lying around. This kind of taps into the previous tip on having a private space at home to work. Now you've got two options when it comes to printing documents at home. You can have a policy that makes people aware of the implications of printing documents at home, how to store them securely, and then to securely bring them into the office to shred them when they're finished with them. Or secondly, you could just prevent people from printing at home full stop. That would certainly get rid of the printing problem, but might be an inconvenience to some people. But printing absolutely needs to be considered alongside your data protection and your cybersecurity policy. Tip number 9 is about doubling down on your patch management. I recently created another video on my YouTube channel about the importance of keeping all the hardware and the software in your business up to date with the latest security patches. Now there's an estimated 57% of all data breaches are attributed to poor patch management, so it's really important that your business does this. Now the problem with working from home is that people are working from different locations at different times, so keeping on top of patch management just gets that little bit trickier. So as a business owner, it's really important that you're asking your IT department or your IT support company for regular reports on the status of the patch management in your business. Because if you've got software or applications that aren't patched, it's going to lead to a data breach or a cyber attack, and that's not what you want. Tip number 10 is all about video conferencing security. Now, the first thought that comes into my mind when I think about lockdown is everybody going home and using Zoom. I think Zoom sales increased by about 320% during that time, which was great for Zoom. But one of the disadvantages is that the security of these video conferencing solutions was not quite where it needed to be at the time of the pandemic. If you remember at the time, there were lots of stories about people Zoom bombing into important meetings. Now things have tightened up since then, but there are still a couple of things that you need to be aware of. The first thing is a little bit like the patch management. If you're using Zoom installed on your computer or Teams or anything like that, make sure that the software is kept up to date. Something else you should consider with your video conferencing solution is encryption, and in particular end-to-end encryption. Now encryption is when all the data is scrambled up. That means it can't be intercepted and it can't be read, so it's really, really secure. End-to-end encryption is where the data is encrypted on the sender's device and it can only be decrypted on the recipient's device. That means, for example, if you send an email, the entire email will be encrypted until it's opened at the other end. If we look at the example of a video call, it means the entire conversation over the video call will be fully encrypted. Now at the time of filming this video, Microsoft Teams doesn't have end-to-end encryption, whereas Zoom does, and it has done since last October. So if it is your intention that your people in your business are going to have really private and confidential video calls, you've got to consider end-to-end encryption. Now tip number 11 is all about creating IT policies. We've talked a lot in this video about creating a policy for this and a policy for that. Policy is quite a formal word, but all a policy really is a list of do's and don'ts when it comes to using your business technology. You might have an email policy which tells people how to use email and what not to do. You might have a social media policy, do's, don'ts when it comes to business social media. You might have an email storage policy. This is how we store documents. Please don't store documents like this. Contrary to popular belief, I think people actually like policies when it comes to technology. It shows people how to use them. It removes the guesswork. If people aren't doing what you want them to do when it comes to technology, but yet you've got no policies in place, then unfortunately you have to take the blame for that. So every business should have a range of technology policies in place so people know exactly what you expect from them, and in turn it will improve your cybersecurity. My 12th and final tip, and as I promised at the start of this video, my most important tip of all, is to make sure you supply all of your home workers with a business owned laptop. I know how easy it is if someone's got a computer at home just to let them work on that computer. It also saves you a lot of money as well. But without your business owning that device, it's really hard for you to control the security on that device. All the tips that I've provided in this video are quite easy and quite straightforward as long as your business owns the computer. If it's someone's personal computer, it could have a weak password, it might not have security software, all the security updates might not have been installed, and at the end of the day, this is just a risk to your business. So I know it's going to cost extra money to supply people with devices, but it's the best possible way that you can do it. Now I hope you found that video useful. There's my 12 tips to cybersecurity when working at home.